Tonight on Reporting Scotland, an exoneration that came too late. Bill Quarm was wrongly accused and convicted of embezzling money from the post office, but died before his name was cleared. His widow says she'll never forget the fear in his eyes.
Bill came home looking like death and crying and saying, "I've had these guys bullying me from the post office."
Also in tonight's programme, the wife of the First Minister speaks of her relief after her brother's family escapes from Gaza.
It means the world to me that my nieces and nephews are safe. It's incredible, but I wish I could save them all.
Nadia El Nakla's brother and grandmother are still trapped in Gaza. She's called on the UK government to develop a resettlement scheme. The women sharing their stories of living with prolapse in the hope of lifting the stigma.
Coming up in the sport, Scottish Rugby Chief Executive Mark Dodson announces he will step down from his role in the summer, but says he wasn't forced to leave.
And Scotland welcomes its biggest Ukrainian refugee yet. Yampol the Black Bear settles into his new home in West Lothian after surviving Russian shelling. Hello, I'm Sally Magnuson. Welcome to Friday's programme. Bill Quarm ran a post office in North Uist. He was devastated to be wrongly accused and then convicted of embezzling money, so much so that his widow believes he contemplated suicide. Their family life never recovered. Bill died eventually of natural causes, too soon to see his conviction overturned last year. It's another desperately sad story in the widespread post office IT scandal. Ian McInnes has more.
Bill came home looking like death and crying and saying, "I've had these guys bullying me from the post office."
This was just the start of what was a nightmare for the Quarm family. Their peaceful, happy home and business in the Western Isles shattered by accusations of theft from the post office. The Horizon scandal reaching even the furthest corners of the country.
His biggest fear was that he was told that he would go to jail if he didn't have this money or produce this money from somewhere. And Bill said to me, "I'll die if I go to prison." And I knew he meant suicide. And the fear in his eyes, I'll never forget it.
Living and working in this island community, where everyone knows one another, there was a huge impact on the family.
Short of being a recluse, he was distancing himself from the family because he was so depressed and so ashamed that he had brought this shame on the home.
Bill was given a community service order after a guilty plea, but he died in 2012. The impact of the scandal continued, though, to haunt the family.
Everything worked so hard to achieve, came down and like a ton of bricks around you. It's very hard to imagine what it's like to lose your home, your life.
It took until October of last year for Bill's conviction to be overturned.
My prayers have been answered. Just wished he had been there around to know,
Talk now turns to compensation for those like Anne and Bill who suffered so much, here and elsewhere.
You can never repay. You can never put a price on somebody's life and, the damage that this has done. No money will ever repay that.
The wife of First Minister Humza Yousaf has described her relief that her brother's wife and 4 children have escaped from Gaza to Turkey. Her brother, 93-year-old grandmother and wider family members are still trapped in Gaza. Nadia El Nakla called on the UK government to develop a resettlement scheme which would allow them and others to come here. The UK government told us it didn't comment on individual cases, but that more than 300 British nationals and their dependents had left Gaza so far. Gillian Sharp reports.
Nadia El Nakla's sister-in-law and her children have been in Turkey since last month. They escaped from Gaza on Christmas Eve through this crossing into Egypt after Turkey put them on a list of people they'd be willing to accept as refugees.
Turkey put them forward. Unfortunately, I'm not sure why. My brother was not approved to leave, but my sister-in-law and the kids were, so they're now separated, but at least the kids are safe. How do you feel now that Doa and the kids are not in Gaza?
A rare call with her brother Mohammed, a doctor who's stuck in Gaza. Conditions and communications are still very difficult and contact limited.
He's so grateful. He's so grateful, and he thanks me all the time, saying that I saved the kids. But I just wish that he was safe as well. And, you know, everyone has the right to be safe, and all the borders are closed. You know, it means the world to me that my nieces and nephews are safe. It's incredible, but I wish I could save them all.
Nadia El Nakla's parents themselves were stuck in Gaza for more than 3 weeks before escaping last November. The effects of their time there are still fresh.
Oh, they're extremely traumatised. I think my mum felt that when she was there that if people could see what was happening to them, then it would stop. But now she's here and she's just continuing to watch the horror, and no one is stepping in to stop this. So she just feels the injustice, she feels the pain that they're going through.
She's urging the UK government to develop a resettlement scheme for British nationals who have family in Gaza who want to come to the UK for safety.
You feel like the world just doesn't care. In my own country, I feel like a second-class citizen. You know, rightly so, we were able to host Ukrainian families and save them. But I can't host my 93-year-old grandmother, I can't host my own brother, but instead, daily I'm waiting for messages to be told that they've been killed.
The UK government previously said it was working round the clock to get those who want to leave out of Gaza. Gillian Sharp, reporting Scotland.
The First Minister has repeated calls for the UK Parliament to be recalled after the airstrikes in Yemen. The UK and the US carried out joint military strikes overnight against the Houthi rebels following the group's attacks on vessels in the Red Sea. Hamza Yusuf says there are significant questions about the action. The Prime Minister said it was proportionate and necessary. Our political correspondent David Wallace-Lockhart joins me now. David, what are the First Minister's concerns?
Well, concern number one for Hamza Yusuf is that he wasn't briefed about these military strikes that the UK has been involved in advance. Concern number two is that MPs, including SNP MPs, haven't been recalled to Parliament to be briefed on what's happened, to hear the justification for these strikes. It was at an SNP event this afternoon, and Stephen Flynn, the SNP's Westminster leader, was introducing the First Minister, and he said he shouldn't be here at that event. He should have been back in the House of Commons with his colleagues hearing about this military action. When it comes to the broader question of what Hamza Yusuf actually thinks about this, he does sound quite sceptical. He says that the UK's previous record of intervening in the Middle East doesn't fill him with confidence. But when it came to whether or not he backs this action, he's told me at this point he simply doesn't have enough information to make a call on that.
I don't know how I can be asked to either support action or not support action when we've had no briefing. We've not seen the full legal basis for it. We don't know what the objective is. We don't know what the end goal is. We don't know if security advice was taken in relation to the security implications both abroad or domestically. So that's why I think it's important all of that is laid out in the House of Commons for MPs to scrutinise and to debate.
No recall of Parliament, David, but MPs will want to discuss it, presumably, when they go back next week.
Yeah, and I suspect when they're back in the Commons on Monday, this issue will dominate. We have heard from Rishi Sunak. He says he considers this an act of self-defence for the UK. He wants to protect global shipping routes. And of course, the way that all this works is, though previous Prime Ministers have gone to the Commons in advance of military action in the past, it is the prerogative of the Prime Minister to take that action should they see fit. And they don't need to go to MPs, they don't need to go to opposition parties in order to discuss this. Now, Labour have said that they back the action. I think what we're hearing from senior figures in the SNP suggests they'll be a lot harder to win over on this issue, but they want to get more information when they're back in Westminster next week.
David, thanks very much indeed. Some of the day's other stories now. A 37-year-old man has been charged in connection with the death of a woman in North Berwick. Nassau Isaacs was found dead after a disturbance at a house in Craigleith Avenue on New Year's Day. Mompati Dodo Isaacs made no plea at Edinburgh Sheriff Court and was remanded in custody. The ferry owner Seamal has announced that the first of 4 ferries being built in Turkey for Scotland's west coast routes will be launched on the 16th of March. The MV Isle of Islay is then scheduled to arrive in Scotland in October this year and will serve Islay and Jura. The work comes amid continued frustration among island communities at the state of west coast services. A fatal accident inquiry into the deaths of 2 prisoners at Pullman Young Offenders Institution has been told by one of the prison officers most closely involved with Katie Allen's care that he wasn't aware she was being bullied and abused. Scott Wilson told the inquiry that he hadn't thought she was a suicide risk and was devastated when she took her own life. Aileen Clark reports.
Bright, intelligent, fun, cheeky, capable young lady. That is how Katie Allen was described at the fatal accident inquiry today by one of the prison officers who was most involved in her care in Pullman Young Offenders Institution. Scott Wilson also told the inquiry that he was not made aware that Katie had a history of self-harm, and he was not aware while in Polmont she had been bullied. The inquiry was shown intelligence reports stating Katie had been bullied and that she received abuse and threats, some relating to her hair loss through alopecia. Mr. Wilson denied being told the day before Katie died that her mother had said she was terrified because she had been threatened. He thought she'd just had a bad visit.
It was put to Scott Wilson by the Advocate Depute. When you look back now on your 3 months with Katie, would you do anything differently? No, he replied. When you see the records detailing concerns, she said, could something have been done differently at Polmont? Yes, he replied. If I had been privy to that information, yes. She said you would have had more insight into the risk that Katie presented. Yes, he agreed.
Earlier, the inquiry heard from Megan Sandeman, seen here on the left, who was a prisoner in Polmont at the same time as Katie. She befriended Katie, noticing she was quiet and wary when she first arrived.
Miss Sandeman told the inquiry that she noticed Katie was upset after her mum's visit. She said I gave her a hug and said she could speak to me about anything. She seemed pretty upset, she said, but I didn't see anything overly concerning. Asked for her reaction when she heard that Katie had taken her own life just hours later. She said, I was in complete shock. Absolutely devastated, she said. And looking back, she said she thought more should have been done to stop people shouting horrible things from their cells at Katie that night, because she was vulnerable.
The fatal accident inquiry will continue next week. Aileen Clark, reporting Scotland, Falkirk Sheriff Court.
Pelvic organ prolapse is something not many women are comfortable talking about, and that diffidence is stopping some of them seeking much-needed help with a condition thought to affect up to half of all women at some time in their lives. In a new BBC iPlayer film, women have been sharing their experiences in the hope of lifting the stigma, as Hayley Jarvis reports.
I'd go to bed at night, wake up in the morning, and all I could think of was vagina.
All-consuming. You can't think of anything else.
I wish that young women, young girls nowadays are being told about prolapses.
Raising awareness about pelvic organ prolapse, a condition that's sometimes considered taboo.
I suffered bladder prolapse 24 years ago with the birth of my first child. And I've been incontinent ever since. My 2-year-old son was having to go and fetch mummy clean pants and clean trousers.
Sam had transvaginal mesh to treat her prolapse and is waiting for it to be removed. Its use was halted in 2018 due to the life-changing side effects many women, like Sam, suffered.
I got to the point where just a simple trip to the supermarket could see me in bed for weeks.
She's now telling others about the importance of taking care of their pelvic health.
I better make sure that they know about pelvic floor exercises and they know how to avoid possibly getting into the mess that I did with bladder prolapse.
The organs in a woman's pelvis are held in place by ligaments and muscles known as the pelvic floor. If it becomes stretched or weakened, then one or more of the organs can move downwards, leading to a bulge that can be felt inside or outside of the vagina. This could be the womb, bladder, bowel, or the top of the vagina.
My bladder and my uterus are prolapsed so badly that they are external from my body.
It can range from pelvic dragging, bulging, incontinence.
I started the Squeeze Along to try and engage with people to raise awareness of pelvic floor exercises.
Doing the right exercises can help, but clinicians say to seek advice if you develop symptoms.
The most important thing you should do is go and see a doctor, because some of the symptoms for a prolapse are other things. So ruling out or ruling in a prolapse is really, really important.
Researchers have found fear of not being taken seriously, embarrassment and lack of awareness can prevent some from seeking help.
We need to address the stigma, tackle it. That could be through different methods such as raising awareness and creating more knowledge base around the symptoms, more and more women talking about the symptoms and their experiences openly, and just creating a buzz around those and making sure that people are aware that these are real issues.
These women are sharing their stories to raise awareness and empower others to get the support they need. Hayley Jarvis, reporting Scotland.
And that documentary, My Prolapse and Me, is available to watch on the iPlayer now. Let's get tonight's sport. What you got for us, Lewis?
Oh, another busy day of sports, Sally, and a big weekend of ice hockey ahead. So let's look forward to it. Thanks very much. Yes, hello there. We'll get to that shortly, but we'll start with rugby, because outgoing Scottish Rugby Chief Executive Mark Dodson says he has not come under internal pressure to leave, and his exit this summer is entirely his decision. Dodson has held the position for more than 12 years, but stressed that his departure is not related to Scottish Rugby's handling of the tragic death of Scotland player Siobhan Cadogan or the organisation's recent huge financial losses.
Effectively, there are other things I want to do in my career, and we felt this was a perfect time to do that. It's time for other people to judge whether Scottish Rugby's in, what kind of shape it's in, and what my tenure has developed. It's not for me to say. I've never been much interested in legacy either. You're doing a job, you've got to drive the business forward, you have to make improvements, but I've never been looking at some kind of legacy.
Football now, and Motherwell chairman Jim McMahon has insisted the club is financially stable despite the launch of a campaign earlier this week trying to attract external investment. The Fir Park club is fan-owned, but its viral video has been divisive among supporters, asking high-profile celebrities to put money into Motherwell.
Taylor Swift, give some dosh.
And McMahon says the 90-second clip is doing the job they hoped it would.
To get 2.5 million views already, given this period, I think it's good, or very good. We've had more Welsh Society members sign up in the first couple of hours of the video than we've had in the last 2 or 3 months. We've actually had already about 10 declarations of interest. Can we find out more about the ability to invest?
A focus on developing younger players at an ambitious club is what attracted Callum Davidson to taking on the role of head coach at Queen's Park. In his first media conference since joining the Spiders, the former St Johnstone manager says his experienced players can expect to be joined by a younger cohort at Lesser Hampden as they try to avoid relegation from the Championship and ultimately gain promotion to the top flight.
It's one of those clubs that is trying to build the infrastructure. They're trying to play young players, young Scottish players. It's something I've got a strong kind of affinity with. It's something I really enjoy doing. I felt that the opportunity was there to do it. The Premier League is our aim eventually. And I think it's one of those, it's not just going to happen overnight, it's going to happen over a period of time, and they've already been at it for a few years now, and hopefully I can take the club forward.
And sticking with managerial appointments, Celtic have announced Elena Sadiku as the women's team's new head coach. The Swede becomes the club's first ever female to take on the role after joining from Everton, signing a 2.5-year deal. Now, it's almost as cold inside as it is outside, but that's not stopped ice hockey fans packing out arenas in Scotland this winter. This weekend, 2 of the country's elite sides go head-to-head as Dundee Stars host Glasgow Clan. After disappointing campaigns for both last time out, Sheila McLaren's been finding out how it's looking at the halfway stage of this season.
Smoothing the way as Dundee Stars look to turn up the heat on their rivals.
Enthusiasm for ice hockey is on the rise in Scotland, and Dundee coach Mark Lefebvre, who returned to the club last season after 6 years away, can't believe the difference.
Well, it's growing leaps and bounds. You just look at the crowds. It's double in size. The support is magnificent. More sponsorship. The city's really rallied around the club as well. So it's and we're a more competitive team as well. Obviously, we had success last time I was here, but we're looking to take that further.
Encouraging more Scots to take up the sport is the next step, with the majority of players in the teams from the US and Canada. Although one of Glasgow Clan stars might be able to pass as homegrown.
I hear you're from a little place called Airdrie, but not the Airdrie we know here.
Yeah, no, Airdrie, Alberta, not Airdrie, Scotland. When I moved here last year, I got a good chuckle out of that. So my parents are coming here at the end of January, so we'll go to the Airdrie, Scotland and get a picture taken for sure. It's really different. Obviously, I didn't know what to expect when I came here last year, and the fans are super intense and super passionate, and I love it.
It's in on the doorstep, cross the line!
And the atmosphere's certain to be frosty tomorrow, with plenty at stake. Dundee are sitting 5th in the Elite Ice Hockey League, with Clan a couple of places behind. The top 4 will be seeded higher in the end-of-season playoffs.
We're happy with where we're at, but we're not satisfied with where we're at. We always think that we can get to another level, and we really think we can compete with those top teams. So for the second half, that's our goal, is to kind of work our way into that top 4 and see if we can set ourselves up for a good spot.
Well, I think my targets are always maybe a little bit higher, not as realistic as we would like. But I think now, seeing the league, I think if we can get healthy, I mean, we have as good a chance as anyone else to compete for the top 4.
To do that, both teams will need to keep their cool and ensure playoff hopes won't be put into cold storage for another campaign. Sheila McLaren, reporting Scotland.
She does like her puns.
She certainly does. I like my transfers, so I've got a little bit of transfer news for you.
Then,
exactly. Hearts have signed Dexter Lembikisa on loan from Wolves, but there's too many transfers to bring you up to speed too. They're all on the BBC Sport website.
Great stuff. Thanks very much, Lewis. Over now to Graham to find out what's happening on BBC Scotland at 7 o'clock.
So why have the UK and the US launched airstrikes on Yemen? Will it escalate conflict? And if shipping routes are disrupted, are we looking at a steep rise in prices? I'll be getting answers from a former British Army officer and NATO analyst. I'll be asking an artist why she put her gallery in a block of high flats, and speaking to a Perthshire woman about prolapse and how girls should be taught more about women's health. All that and more at 7 over on BBC Scotland.
A bear rescued from a war zone by Ukrainian soldiers has arrived here to be rehomed. Yampol, the Asiatic black bear, is named after the town in eastern Ukraine where he was discovered in an abandoned zoo after months of Russian occupation. Stephen Gordon has more.
Settling into life in his new home, Yampol the bear's journey to Five Sisters Zoo hasn't been an easy one. He's named after the town where he was rescued by Ukrainian soldiers after months of Russian occupation. Discovered in an abandoned zoo, he was one of only a few animals to have survived.
He has been through a lot. He's been in the middle of a war zone and he's experienced some really horrible things. And so you never really know when you're working with rescue animals until you meet them and you start working with them, just how they're going to react to their new environment, to the people that are working with them.
Transporting a 30-stone bear requires care and attention. The last few metres of Yampol's journey from a Belgian animal sanctuary were particularly tense. Emerging from his crate, a few sniffs, before thoughts quickly turn to his stomach. Then a trip outside, where Yampol begins to explore his new surroundings.
You're always thinking about him. He's our priority this morning, just making sure that the move went well and everything was comfortable for him. And yeah, as you can see, he's arrived and he's settled in well, and yeah, he seems happy.
Yampol's arrived earlier than the keepers were expecting, so this is a temporary enclosure for him, while a permanent one is built elsewhere in the zoo.
Asiatic black bears typically hibernate in the colder months. As Yampol meets the neighbours and adjusts to his new life in Scotland, the hope is that it gets off to a restful start. Stephen Gordon reporting Scotland.
All right, for some to be able to hibernate during the colder months, So it's getting even more cold here, isn't it?
It is absolutely. Arctic air going to seep in. You'll really feel the difference. That bitterly cold air. You'll know where your family come from. You'll be used to it, well equipped. And we'll see more of this in the forecast as well as we head through the weekend and into next week as well. Thank you very much, Sally. A very good evening to you. There was a bit more in the way of cloud today, I have to admit, than I was anticipating, but we saw some sunshine across the east and in the borders. The combined pressure chart and air mass graphic tells the story. A weak front crossing our shores tonight, then these two weather fronts sinking south, opening the gates to cold, bitterly cold Arctic air. You can see that indicated by the blue shade. Now, as far as tonight's concerned, it's a largely dry start, but we have one of our weather fronts across the north bringing some rain. As it sinks southwards, it just loses any rain on it, leaving a bit of cloud, some spots and spits of rain here and there. Drier behind it, with a few showers pushing into the north, and it will be quite windy across northern Scotland. After a chilly start in the south, temperatures eventually recovering. Into tomorrow, early cloud and any patchy rain very quickly clears away from southern Scotland, and then for most of us it's a fine day, dry with some winter sunshine, although strong winds across the north will push in a number of showers, but they'll push through quickly on those strong to gale force winds across the north. Now some bright spells in between, showers for the north, but I think across eastern Scotland to the south of Aberdeenshire southwards, some sunshine through the central lowlands, a fine day as well. It'll be breezy, some sunny spells for the west too, but we pick up and more in the way of cloud running up the west coast with a breeze here, quite a strong wind over the Western Isles pushing in some showers as well. So if you're thinking of heading to the hills tomorrow, starting with northern ranges, there will be some wintry showers push through quickly on gusty winds, but factor in some sub-zero temperatures and there will be bitterly cold, feeling bitterly cold. Into southern ranges, it will be bitterly cold here as well, but it will be dry, but visibility will be excellent, and in fact visibility will be excellent across all ranges tomorrow, out with any showers across northern Scotland. Raw feel really everywhere, and be prepared on Sunday for real wintry conditions if you're thinking of heading out then. As far as the rest of the afternoon and evening is concerned, still a number of scattered showers across northern Scotland. They'll start to sink southwards, but then we start to head into that real wintry spell of weather, starting with a combined snow and ice yellow warning from the Met Office. That comes into play midnight tomorrow night, lasting right through to Monday night. Snow showers with ice going to be a problem here. The snow showers become more intense and frequent Sunday night into Monday, I think leading to some travel disruption and some difficult conditions on the roads as well. Northern Scotland will see showers becoming increasingly frequent on Sunday, turning to snow even at lower levels, but for central and southern parts, some glorious sunshine, bitterly cold everywhere, windy in the north. And here's our weather front bringing snow and wind on Monday.
Great stuff. Thank you very much, Judith. Tonight's main news again. The widow of a North US postmaster wrongly convicted over the Horizon IT scandal says she believes her husband contemplated taking his own life. And McAlpine will be here with your late news, but until then, from everyone here, good evening.